everyone, and welcome back to the Tastemakers. This is the podcast, of course, where we sample everything that's happening around the television circle of shows and movies. And we let you know what's worth watching, what the news is, and all of that good stuff. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and today I'm here with Grace Leeder. How you doing, Grace?
Just circling all the things on the TV, Taran. That's what I'm doing. A lot of things are wrapped or almost about to wrap, so it's kind of an exciting time in television right now, I think.
Yes, we are closing out a lot of the shows that have been on between, like The Boys, The Acolyte. We got Presumed Innocent is ending soon. House of the Dragon only has 2 episodes left. So, it's the end of an era.
Yeah, very busy. It was a busy June and July here. I'll be interested to see if things pop up. I don't. Looking at the calendar moving forward, I don't think there's quite as much like really big name shows happening. So that'll be our opportunity to find, other than Big Brother, of course, it'll be our opportunity to find the little niche, little what's there. We got to wade through everything to find what's on, what's good.
Yes. Well, in the meantime, though, there are still some movies coming out. Those, unless it's Horizon: An American Saga / Part 1 / The Comeback, movies will just come and go. And so, you've checked out some movies, I think, this week.
I did, yeah. I watched. Well, I watched Twisters. I think that's the big headline. It made $80 million this weekend, which is a lot of money for a sort of reboot sequel, legacy sequel, if you will. Glenn Powell driven, sequel to 1996 Twisters. I believe it was covered. Both of these movies on RHAP this weekend. Taran, my headline is, it was a lot of fun. It's a blockbuster. It's a popcorn flick that I thought was exceptionally well done. This is the perfect example, Taran. You're not a Letterboxd user? Have I asked you this before?
No, I never went to Letterboxd.
No,
I don't
okay.
like the 5-star system.
Okay, interesting. I mean, you don't have to rate it. You could just say you watched it. And so, I love Letterboxd. Letterboxd has this feature term where you do rate out of 5 stars, and then there's also this very weird like button. And I was confused because I would watch movies that I like, and I would give them like 4 stars, and I'm like, and then I liked it, so I clicked the like button. But apparently, like is actually the heart button is more like a loved it button. And I feel like Twisters is the best example of me giving a movie. So I don't give every movie that I watch the heart button. Twisters is the best example to me of a movie that I was like, that's 4 stars. That's 4 out of 5 stars. And also I'm going to tap the heart button because I really, really liked it. Because I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I think it's like the best version of the type of movie. It's not quite the best version because I think Top Gun Maverick is the best type of movie that this movie is trying to be, but it's very close. It's very easy to watch, enjoyable, big spectacle, fun lead performances. I enjoyed it a lot.
I mean, it's a movie I would like to go see if I had the time. I think it would be fun. Also, I think Letterboxd it lets you do half stars, which I think is fine,
you can do half
I
star.
assume.
Yeah.
But I think perhaps the thing that prevented me from going there, I think it either lacks TV or it lacks TV functionality that I would want, like rating individual episodes. So I go with Tracked.
Oh,
yeah.
And you rate your movies?
I rate movies there. I rate TV shows, seasons, and episodes.
I've heard Letterboxd is adding television shows, which I would like. I currently use TV Time, and I like TV Time. My problem is I'm hesitant to just like jump over to something new because it won't have all my historical data. I think if Letterboxd starts to do TV, I will buy into Letterboxd as my one and only. But if you're a Tracked user, that's interesting.
I had to import all of my IMDb data like a decade ago.
Oh, yeah, but I didn't do it. I haven't done anything on IMDb. I don't know if I can import my TV Time data. I think that's propriety of TV Time. Twisters is interesting because it's part of like it's IP without really being IP. Like the movie doesn't do almost anything to be like, remember the movie from 1996? There's literally, I feel like I rewatched Twisters. I watched Twisters as a kid. It scared me a lot as a kid. That and the opening scene of Scream, which I somehow ended up watching by accident, scared me a lot as a kid. But the movie does almost nothing to like pay homage in an overt way. But like, when you talk about you wanting to go to Twisters, is this something of you have like any fondness for Twister, the first movie ever on DVD, I believe, Taran? Or you're just like what is alluring you to be like, if I had time, which I think is a very popular sentiment of movie going right now, is like, I would go see it, but is basically, I think, the movie going experience in 2024.
It's certainly been mine. It's
Yeah.
honestly, I have no real connection. I remember watching Twisters probably on like the Sci-Fi Channel when I was a kid. And it was fine, but I think it's not really the connection to that specific movie, but more so the connection to that kind of movie that's just kind of like dumb fun. That I enjoy those kinds of movies. I feel like I kind of miss those kinds of movies. I feel like we don't see as many of them nowadays. Like we're getting like
Do you mean
being a horror
disaster
fan is
movie
great
yes, agreed.
nowadays. There's
Yes.
tons of great horror, lots of artsy horror, lots of fun horror, but the sort of like not necessarily disaster movie, because I don't know if it's exactly disaster, but it's sort of like this mix of like disaster and feeling like that fun horror-y trope of it. That is kind of like drawing me into wanting to see this.
Like Big, I think too, again, this movie for me is completely like there's
Like
yeah.
The Day After Tomorrow, that sort of thing. Like
Yeah.
that's a disaster movie, but like
Yeah.
this, like I like those movies. They're fun to me.
Yeah. Like the whole world comes together to solve a problem, basically. This is not what this movie does, but like
No,
close,
no, not necessarily that, but
No. I don't know that I've been able to figure out what movie you're
I mean, listen, I love the core, which is very much the whole world coming together to
Yeah.
solve a peach being set on fire. But like, it's it's I don't know. There's just something very like low stakes, but very like fun about people, I assume, running from twisters.
No, actually, they're running towards them, Taran. I don't know if you watch Twisters. This is the whole point. They're storm chasers. This is
Mm,
the point. They go
yes.
towards them. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing about this movie that I think like I got kind of excited for when I watched the trailer and I was rewatching the first movie is that like I don't know what they're gonna call the next movie. Probably like Twisters, but the E will be a 3, I think, because I don't think you can do like twist it, more twisters. I don't think there's much room there. But
Mm.
basically, like what I got excited for, these are fully in the trailer, which is just like, okay, this time there's like 2 tornadoes split up. Now there's 2. Or like the tornado actually is now on fire, or like there's like catastrophic lightning. And it's just like, how can we escalate what is happening in a way that I actually maybe don't want them to keep doing, because it will get like sillier, like Sharknado probably. But I had a lot of fun at this movie. I went in a kind of a small town here where my parents live, and there's a pretty sizable crowd of people who were also enjoying it and loving it. My good friend Ariel is like out on this movie. He did not like it, but don't trust his movie takes for Twister, because I thoroughly enjoy it. I think people should go watch this. It's so fun. It's great. Yeah.
I mean, like, is Glenn Powell kind of part of this? Because I feel like he's been kind of crushing with movie roles and at least financial success lately.
He's great. There's a moment where and it's in the trailer too, but when he just walks in the rain, I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. He is a movie star, I think. And I think, honestly, like not getting the role that he auditioned for initially in Top Gun Maverick, which was, I believe, and I'm going to get this mixed up. I believe he plays Rooster because Goose is the one from the original. It's funny. These are like 2 kind of like movies that came out.
Yeah, I think he ends up playing a different guy, like Hangman or something.
Sorry, that's what I mean. And then I'm just like, Goose is from the original. Rooster is Goose's son. And he plays this other character. I can't remember. And he's kind of like kind of seems like he's going to be the bad guy. And spoilers for Top Gun Maverick, he's not totally as smarmy as this. I think that's perfect setup for then him to be able to like there's this thing of like if he got like pushed so much, but now I just feel like it's pretty natural. He does that movie with Sydney Sweeney, which I quite enjoyed a fair bit. Hitman I thought was very fun. I think Glenn Powell is good at Daisy Edgar Jones. I thought was like very good in this as well. It's a pretty good cast. The guy who's playing Superman is in this movie as well. David Cornsweet, and then also Anthony Ramos was in this movie. I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, it's I really did like Hitman. What's weird to me is that I thought Anyone But You, which I think was very successful, was a pretty bad movie. I thought at least. And
Yeah.
I didn't I liked Glenn Powell in Hitman a lot, and I like Sydney Sweeney, but I just felt like the two of them together for some reason was just like not working. But despite that, he clearly is finding some amount of success. I also just like for some reason find his face to be very funny. Maybe it's because Hitman, he does so many things with it. But I see like images of Twisters with him in it, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's Hitman guy. I don't know. He's just like he's got the same face all the time.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I think he's got a movie star face. I think, yeah. I thought Glenn
Like
Powell
it's
was
handsome,
really
but
good.
also quirky a little bit.
And I think you kind of need that. I think you need like the like to be so just like the box cutter handsome. I don't think always that doesn't work for me all the time. But like, yeah, he is a little quirky. He can be very funny. He's pretty funny in this movie too. There is and the movie does this. I feel like it pays homage to the first one without that thing of like needing to know everything that happens. So there's a clever twist with like in the first one, you have sort of two competing storm chaser groups who are both trying to basically do the same thing. In this, there's a twist on that where you sort of have like these they're actually YouTubers, Taran. Glenn Powell's
They're
group
with
are like
time.
YouTube storm. Yeah, they're YouTube storm chasers. So they're not doing it for science. They're just willing to risk it to get the most amount of views. But yeah, I think Glenn Powell like drives this. There's also a scene where like it's him and Daisy Edgar Jones where they're like just sort of like doing science, but they're like geeking out about it in a way that's like very endearing to me. The movie works for me. I think people should go watch it. I do think the thing that is a little, I don't really care how well movies do at the box office. Other than that, I want movies to make money if I like the movie, and so that people can make more of those movies. Like I would probably watch a movie like this every week. I think it's going to get bumped out of a lot of the theaters it would be playing in, Taran, because there's a pretty gigantic movie coming out this weekend.
Yes, that is very true. We have Deadpool coming soon, which is, I think, like probably one of the most anticipated sort of like at least box office movies, because Marvel had like, at least in comparison to like its heyday, what, like 4 or 5 years ago, seems to have been kind of limping along ever since Endgame. And so I think they've consistently, like they and the audience have consistently been waiting for like, what is the thing that's going to get them back on track? I don't know. Is it Deadpool?
Well, I think that there's a secondary problem, Taran, to the post Endgame thing, which is there was this fragmentation of like TV and movie stuff that is tough, and it did feel like maybe that didn't work as well as they might have hoped it would. But then they run into this other problem where they announce what they're doing in the next Avengers movie, and then the big name they have behind it, which is Jonathan Majors, ends up being in legal trouble, some assault allegations. So he's out now, and they do have to pivot. There's also the other big Marvel news, which didn't have slated here, but I believe the Russo brothers are coming back for an Avengers movie. Yeah, they're going to direct Avengers 5 and Secret Wars. So, I mean, I do feel like I feel like Kang was the thing that was going to like potentially give them an avenue to kind of like potentially come back. And then the secondary, when that now doesn't work, I do think, Taran, the secondary piece is like X-Men. I don't know if you feel the same, but I feel like Marvel fans I feel like we're waiting for sort of like, what are you doing? Like I don't even know who the Avengers in the next Avengers movies are going to be, Taran.
I mean, yes, exactly. Quite honestly, I think that like the Kang stuff wasn't even really working that well for me. Like Ant-Man kind of sucked.
Partially because they started in the TV show too, which I think was
Right.
like
It's just like I don't know that we can blame it on the Jonathan Majors thing because it's like, was that even really working in the first place? I don't really think so. If anything, this gives them an opportunity to like just do something a little better, maybe. I don't know. It's also wild to me. I was just looking, like the Deadpool 2 was 2018. It was 6 years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
Why?
yeah.
I was like, yeah, another Deadpool movie. That makes sense. Maybe a little bit longer than last time. 2 years between the first two, 6 between the next one. But yeah, I think, in terms of like resetting the Marvel, I think that X-Men makes a lot of sense. It's a very popular franchise, and as we talked about, X-Men 97 did pretty well. So I think it's like a great go-to. I think that Marvel's initial success was always based on sort of like reinvigorating some of like the B tier heroes. But then I think they kind of went like C tier and then D tier, and then like really just like, who the hell is this even person? And so maybe coming back to some of their A tier heroes makes a little sense.
I agree. I have to be very honest with you, Taryn. I've actually not seen either of the Deadpool movies. I've watched all the Marvel movies, but I have not watched Deadpool. I will be watching them both this week in preparation to go watch the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, which is on track to make a ton of money. I think projections are like 160 million. Twisters was a phenomenal success and made $80 million. So it's going to like potentially double that if it meets the projections, which I think all like everything is pointing to it will. Very interesting that it's an R-rated movie that is going to do this well, because that certainly does limit a little bit of your potential. Like if you look at the movies that can make a ton of money, you're often looking at, I did contribute to the box office score of Despicable Me 4 this weekend, Taran, which I did solely because I needed a movie to take my nieces to. So that's how I contributed to that. But Deadpool and Wolverine should do that. I guess my question for you about Deadpool and Wolverine, my understanding is that like it is in the Marvel universe, but like not like Deadpool has been showing up in anything else. And then this version of Wolverine, I mean, Hugh Jackman is returning, and like, is that, I know Feige has this like relationship with like, he does like to keep things canon if he can, but because it's a little bit disconnected than your regular Marvel fare, does it, what does a successful, like if the movie does what it needs to do, which is be a successful, because we're talking about, I think it's going to make money. So then if it's a creative flop, that's just bad. But what does it need to do to be successful to like even boost the reputation back of Mark? Can it do that, Taran? I don't even know if it can.
Well, that was sort of always the thing about Deadpool, was that it was sort of like a separate thing from the Marvel universe. Like it was like, I think, to my knowledge, and I'm not a Marvel expert by any means, but like to my memory, it was like, this could technically be canon, but it's not really part of the MCU, but it's kind of part of the MCU. You could, like he mentions the X-Men, I think, but we're not going to show any X-Men, and we're not going to call them X-Men because we can't actually do that at this time. And we're not connecting any other like MCU characters into here. Maybe we reference them. I'm not sure. I don't remember. It's been over 6 years. But also in terms of like beyond just the canon of it all, the tone of it was very different. It was the R-rated movie.
The trailer had a pegging joke, Terrence.
Right. And so that was another angle to it that was like, this just feels like a separate one-off thing. Was very successful. They brought it back for a sequel. They, I think, then brought in like the Juggernaut or whatever to be like, oh, look, we have like more well-known character. And I think Deadpool is a lot more connected to the X-Men in general than like the rest of the MCU, which they all kind of have their own corners at this point. So I think that what Deadpool offers, what Deadpool and Wolverine offers, is kind of like a chance to say what would happen if we took this tone and this sort of approach to Marvel and brought in some of, like, again, like we actually incorporated it more into the universe, the MCU. And can that reinvigorate some of the feelings? Because maybe part of the issue is just a tone thing. All these movies feel the same constantly, and something that was good about, I think, the original movies in the MCU is that they all did feel fairly different. And nowadays I feel like they do kind of mostly, even though they're supposed to all have their own little niches, they all just kind of feel the same. And the same with all the shows just kind of feel the same. And so Deadpool hopefully feels different, and that will be fun.
I totally agree with you. I think there's a way in early Marvel was like, what if we do like, a spy noir thriller? What if we do this type of movie, and that's a superhero movie? Whereas I feel like increasingly like every movie gets like superhero gloss, like, over top of it, that like sort of like washes out a lot of the other stuff. I think like one of my favorite shows from the last little while, which is is it Werewolf? But I'm gonna botch the title, and I liked it, which is like the Halloween werewolf special. That was like, I haven't seen anything like that. It was like fully like black and white for a bunch of it, which is very fun. I wish they would do more of that. Even I think the swing on sort of like multiverse of madness for me was fun, because I hadn't really like seen the like horror movie, superhero movie, like, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I quite like that. The thing with like comic book stuff that like I think is fascinating, and also I hate because I'm not like an expert in it, which is that like they can just like, I'm pretty sure that this Wolverine is not the same Wolverine we've seen in anything else. I think that has been confirmed, that he's like comic book suit accurate. Wolverine is a different Wolverine than we've seen. And like Deadpool, I think in the second one, I think I've seen this, so he can like he can time travel, right? So he can mess with the events, and we can do multiverse stuff. I just think I don't, like Josh is asking us in the chat, can you recast Wolverine? Like, how hard of a task is that to do? Which I think is immensely hard. I think actually more often than not, like the X-Men stuff, they've actually gotten recasting quite right. I thought like some of the newer X-Men movies that I've seen, I actually think did a pretty good job at recasting some of the like pretty famous X-Men characters. I don't know. I just struggle to see how this movie then ends up like getting me excited for the next thing. But I guess if it's just Hugh Jackman as Wolverine in a thing that also brings back Robert Downey Jr. and other people, I feel like in one hand I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I feel like creatively that's the best thing they could do, but also like I probably will go see that movie on opening night.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think Hugh Jackman is obviously iconic as Wolverine, but people will move on. I think it's these things happen. I think they'll find somebody else, and maybe they'll be shorter, and people will be happy about that. So Josh in the chat says Glenn Powell.
Glenn Powell as Wolverine.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Mhm.
I mean, I like, this is definitely, the thing about Marvel movies was that like I was never like a super fan of Marvel movies, but what they did for me, especially back when going to the movies was felt a little easier, like in the wake of Movie Pass and AMC starting their thing, was like, oh, it's a reason to get out and go to the theater, because you're going to have a good time. You're going to have a solid time at a Marvel movie. And I feel like that's kind of gone away. So I would like to find the time to go and see Deadpool and Wolverine. Hopefully it's really good and really fun. And it's like, can kind of bring me back to that time. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
We shall see. This is our classic catchphrase. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna go watch it probably on Thursday night. I think the town I could go for a little drive and probably see it Thursday, but we'll see. We'll definitely check in on how it did at the box office, and then how we found it, if we find the time to go see it next week.
Yes. All right. Well, let's circle back around to some TV then, because there's some fun things to check in on. We got the Nielsen ratings for last month, which is
Yes.
the way that I guess Nielsen ratings work, which is that you get them quite delayed. And with the streaming world, what we get is how many minutes were viewed of this show within a week's time, which is a very strange metric, especially to be so delayed. But I guess it's what we get from Nielsen at least, and there are a few different companies I think that try to give numbers, and streaming services will sometimes release their own numbers, but
yeah, Netflix is releasing like quarterly, I think, or 6 month span at a time. They'll release everything from the last 6 months, which is a little delayed, but it is what it is.
Yes. So what the headline here was that House of the Dragon hit a series high in the week of its premiere, or the week after its premiere, I should say, one or the other.
I'll fact check that as we're chatting, but yeah, I think there either would have been 1 or 2 episodes out at the time of
Yes.
that this data would be tracking.
And so that's, that in comparison to what we talked about, where the initial ratings that were being reported for the premiere were down a little bit from the season 1 premiere, but the total minutes watched seem to have gone up a bit. And I would imagine part of that is that now there's a lot more House of the Dragon that people can be watching. If you're tracking like total amount of minutes through the first season of House of the Dragon, there's only, in the middle of the season, there's only 4 episodes to watch. So any one person can only watch 4 episodes so many times. Whereas now you have a whole season of season 1 to watch, to catch up on, to remind yourself what happened 2 years ago in House of the Dragon, on top of the premiere and second episode of season 2. So I think ideally hope to go up in terms of overall streaming minutes for a second season, as long as you're not dropping too many viewers season over season.
Yeah, so the top of the chart actually for this week is actually Bridgerton, which released Thursday, June 13th. Released. Let me just fact check the second part of their third season. So it's very similar. You have 2 other seasons of things you're watching, and when you look at the Netflix numbers, that proves to be true. That Netflix Bridgerton season 1 and season 2 were very highly watched, and then people were also watching all of season 3, including the new episodes that had just been dropped. And so similarly, this takes into account only basically the first. I would assume the first episode, basically like Monday the 17th, the premiere of House of the Dragon season 2 was the night before, and so this is all the data basically of that week after, and then including that night, which would be a very small amount of time for people to be able to watch the second episode. So that's basically what it's calculating, is that's that viewership, which I would agree with you is season 1. Catch up, people watching. I did that. I rewatched season 1, not that week before, but people might do that. And then the new episode premiere. The headline here with like House of the Dragon hitting its series high comes from Rick Porter, who, very funny, Josh shared with us also an article that he did about like how basically like there is a big problem with like Nielsen streaming data. It's it's not the most reliable. So for example, the streaming data isn't these House of the Dragon numbers are basically only people who are streaming House of the Dragon at some point that week. It's not people who turn on their television to watch HBO, which I think probably will continue to be significantly less people every year as people continue to cut cable. But the streaming numbers are maybe like a little, and minutes defined, like minutes watched, I think is like, I don't know what the right answer for like what number I want in how to slice the data, but for example, if you like Stranger Things, I'm sure that new season that had like 90-minute episodes has a lot of minutes watched compared to a show that is like, say, a 20-minute sitcom or 30-minute sitcom will not have as many minutes watched just by virtue of it having less. So I maybe need some like division math thing going on to find a better thing, but this is all the streaming services want to give us and then just use the numbers however they can to like, slice and dice whatever. They got a headline that said, House of the Dragon hit series high in terms of viewership.
Yes, and that's how famously Big Brother beat Stranger Things season 4, because Big Brother with episodes and live feeds has so much more content that they were able to put out that their streaming numbers were actually higher. than Stranger Things, and which Stranger Things is infinitely more popular than Big Brother
Yeah.
at this point. So yeah, it is a very difficult measure of success in terms of, I think, what a lot of at least consumers or viewers would like to know. But perhaps it is something that the people who make these shows, or the people who are owning the streaming services, I think they maybe only really care about like how long are people on my streaming service. If it means like, oh, it maybe doesn't matter to them how many minutes they spend watching a single episode versus 3 episodes in the same amount of time, as long as they're spending that time on their service, feeling like they're getting use out of it, maybe watching ads, whatever the case may be. And so yeah, it is very like it feels like a very industry focused number as opposed to like a viewer focused number, because I think what we would like to know is how popular is it.
Yeah, I mean, and two other things. As of June 2020, it was only Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Hulu, and Netflix that are getting Nielsen data. That might have changed because other streaming companies could have opted in to have their data be included in the Nielsen streaming reports. It also doesn't include anything outside of the USA, which is fine. It's American centric. But it also, you had to have watched the streamer on your TV. If you didn't watch on your TV, it didn't count. So if you watch on your phone or your computer, it didn't count. So it's not totally accurate. I don't know that says a lot. I don't know that you would find a lot of shows that potentially you're like, oh, I would watch it on my phone, but I'm not gonna I won't watch this one on my phone. I don't know if that really matters, but suffice to say, it's slightly incomplete data in terms of people who actually watch the show. So take it all with a grain of salt. But I think that my big takeaway, like the thing that I like kind of like popped out of my brain, and I have to say, Taran, I'm a tastemaker, but it's actually my mom who was like, you know what I'm watching? Your Honor. And I think it's very good. And then I was like, that's an Apple TV Plus show. And she's like, no, it's not. It's a Netflix show. I was like, is it? And then it got acquired from, I guess it was an Apple TV Plus show, I believe. I'm going to fact check
I think
that.
it was Paramount.
Was it Paramount?
I think it was Paramount Plus.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. That I don't think Apple would have sold it to Netflix. So that tracks, and then got added to Netflix and got this tremendous bump, including from my lovely mother, who started watching Your Honor. This is the Bryan Cranston show where he's like a judge, but then is caught up in this whole thing. My mom liked it a lot, and I probably will check it out because it was so high up on the streaming ratings. But clearly it got a Netflix bump by being added to Netflix. And you were talking about this. This is sort of like what happened to Suits. There's like a bunch of shows you can sort of put in this bucket. And it's just because Netflix has so many subscribers. They're like, dwarf anything. I guess they don't. Everything else is, I don't know what the proper pronoun. They have way more subscribers than anybody else. So if you put something on there, it's likely that people will see it and watch it, and their algorithm will just shove it in your face, and you'll watch it, and you'll watch all of it. So very interesting. Like there really is, when we talk about like the streaming wars, there really is no beating Netflix at the moment. Other things are coming close in terms of like the type of content, the quality of content they're putting out. But if you just want people to watch your thing, probably where you want to put it is on Netflix.
Yeah, I mean it's wild. Your Honor, it was second place overall in the for the week. Having more views than, or more watched minutes, I should say, than House of the Dragon, than The Boys, second only to Bridgerton that week, which is wild because I feel like nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about Your Honor. I watched this show like 4 years ago, dropped it mid-season and forgot about it. And now 4 years later, I'm looking at a chart saying Your Honor is number 2, higher than The Boys and House of the Dragon. And I'm like, that show is still on? Wait, what? It's wild. And it does make some sense to me. As Josh is mentioning in the chat here, the opening is very grabbing. It really catches you. And so it's great, I think, for a streaming service. And so to be acquired by Netflix, to push it out, to have a really great hook in the beginning, I think really works for it. And I think that, like, it was a show to me also that did not seem like it was going to be more than one season. And I don't know exactly what the story is, but I imagine that what they found was like, oh, this is doing well for us. Let's make a second season. And then they eventually chucked it over to Netflix. And who knows what kind of legs this show has now that it's sort of blown up. So it's for the record, in terms of recommendations, it's a perfectly fine show. Bryan Cranston, of course, is great in it. I think the reason I dropped it was that it was like A, really stressful, and B, decisions were being made that I just couldn't. I was just like, this is just so stupid. Like, what are we doing? Which for me is a problem, but maybe not for other people. But when the show is that stressful and bad decisions are being made, I'm just like, I don't know if this is for me. But yeah, very interesting to see how the sort of like industries work, how the like atmosphere of streaming television works, where Suits was so fascinating to me because it was another show that like was on like a decade ago, it feels like, I don't even know. And then all of a sudden blossoms in popularity. But that one, it was like you could sort of understand. It was such an easily watchable show, part of the Blue Sky sort of philosophy. Your Honor is so intense. Like, it's such a different thing to have found so much success later. I would almost put it more in like the Mayor of Kingstown or like Yellowstone sort of Taylor Sheridan genre. And so I guess that makes some sense, but it's interesting that it was able to find so much success so much later.
I always, this is going to be a thing we'll perpetually struggle with, but Breaking Bad was on Netflix in the United States. Like, eventually got added. And Better Call Saul too. Is that true?
I think so.
Can you tell me? Yeah. So I wonder
never
if
watched
there's
on Netflix, so I don't know.
I wonder if there's that too. It was definitely this is where like Canadian Netflix has different properties. Something like we didn't get Hitman actually because it got bought by a Canadian distributor, and so it was only in theaters and then video on demand. So you actually couldn't watch Hitman on Netflix in Canada, which was very annoying. But yeah, I mean, Josh also shared an article. There's an article from Lucas Shaw, who's great. I love. This is from Bloomberg, and he's talking about like just how people like insurmountable people feel like Netflix's like streaming success might be. They added 8 million customers last quarter, raised both sales and profit margins. Quarterly profit rose 44% from 2023. So that's a lot. Netflix buys and creates the most streaming content. Apple was pretty high up there as well. Looks like they might be cutting back. I think this is where you're starting to see, I think, kind of a hot take, not a hot take, but people starting to give the take of like, wow, Apple just has stuff coming out all the time. They have like a bunch of shows that I'm looking forward to. Pachinko is like a show that's coming back in a few weeks. They had like a tremendous season 1, but just in the like what I felt like they were doing compared to Netflix, when you feel like you finish a show, like there's probably something else you could turn on. And I don't always feel like that's the case with Apple TV when I finish a show and I'm looking at what else I might watch. I don't think the content library is quite as strong of an offering in Apple TV, but I feel like the more that they're doing to try and produce the content, I feel like the better it's been. I feel like they could have a really strong library, but it looks like they're going to cut back too. Paramount is obviously, I think, going to cut back, and Warner Brothers. These are both like, one just got sold. One is in like, not the greatest place. Like, there's the idea that these companies went into streaming, like creating their own streamer and then content for their streamer, I think is something that you will probably see them move away from. And like Warner Brothers has already started to do the thing of like, let's sell Dune to Netflix, like let's put that on, like that's how we can be successful. I think you'll probably see like streaming mergers, and then and less of these companies making their own content. And if they do, they might, like if they don't have a platform anymore, like I think there's a chance that it won't be long before Paramount Plus is at the very least absorbed into something else. And honestly, I just think it's because like Netflix got there first and just never like gave up the lead. They just figured it out. We're going to talk about like, some of the things that they're doing that I do not like, but it's hard to deny that they are like the juggernaut in the streaming world right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it felt like the formula that they used was, we already have a large library, so let's focus on creating quality content, starting with things like House of Cards, which had its own issues eventually, but felt like, oh, this is like really good prestige television. That Netflix
they've had a bunch of hits. There's shows that
right.
like I feel like not off. They talk about like shows not being able to break the mainstream. Like I feel like Bridgerton has not been as mainstream this season, but it certainly did feel mainstream. Stranger Things, House of Cards. There's like a bunch of them too. You're right.
Yes, what I'm saying is that like that's I think where they started in terms of making television themselves, or like being originals for Netflix,
Yeah.
And made a name for themselves as not just a content library but also a producer of high quality prestige television. And then they started slowly kind of widening the scope and then eventually it just became what it is now, which is just like scattershot everywhere. It's just about like how many of these shows can we make original to us, and then every once in a while we get a hit, and every once in a while we have a good show. But it's mostly just about quantity, it feels, for Netflix, and it feels like it's been that way for a while. And so it almost feels like Apple and some of these other streaming services, they were like, let's produce a lot of quality content to make a name for ourselves. And to some degree they have, but like I think it's just so hard to compete with Netflix in this space. I think they were able to follow that formula because there was no one else there at the time. They made quality content to compete with networks that were on a different platform, and they were like, hey, this platform can do the same thing. Whereas now, if Apple makes a bunch of really good shows, it's like, sure, but there's, another bunch of really good shows right a click away. And so I don't know. I think maybe the issue is that Apple needs to just focus more on like, do I want to be HBO or do I want to be Netflix? And the problem is that HBO is currently also facing that issue themselves, where they're trying to be more like Netflix. And it's like, I think you need to sort of probably pick a lane and figure out where you want to be, or eventually, fall away.
Or don't own your own streamer. Don't
Right.
don't have your streamer. Don't care.
But I don't think they want to give up on it. It's like Apple. It's like we're so much more valuable than Netflix. Like we should be able to beat them.
Yeah, I don't think Apple or Amazon. I don't think I see Prime Video or Apple TV Plus going away. I do think Paramount Plus. They said Hulu has shifted so much anyway. Disney Plus was like acquiring a bunch of it. Like I think Disney would stick around too. So but Disney has this thing of like, if you're a parent, it feels like a no-brainer to get Disney because you can get all of the Disney content library there as well. There's just such a stacked thing. I think the thing for Netflix too, the two things that are really interesting about them, just as like the juggernaut, is now they can also be trying to do some other stuff that is much more in line with linear TV. So they bought Monday Night Raw. So they're going to have, whether or not they keep it on Mondays, but they're going to have a live wrestling show once a week for 3 hours that they can plug ads into. They did the roast of Tom Brady. They did a tennis match. They're doing more linear TV style things, which I think they can do because they can keep all the content and like on demand and the binge model stuff there too. So I think that's a thing. And then I think like you'll notice, I think they'll probably like move away from like not greenlighting Red Notice, like the most expensive movie ever, which seemingly was incredibly watched. Like, but I don't think they don't think they need to spend that type of money on their content necessarily as much as they maybe did previously and kind of thought they did. You want to talk about Cobra Kai's release strategy? Because I think that's because one of the things that we know about Netflix is like they drop all the shows at once. That's like it changed television, was like we drop our show all at once, and they have slowly been moving away from this, but not they're not committing fully to like they're not releasing anything weekly. I guess they have done that, right? They have done, or at least batches.
Batches
in
is usually the way that they would do it. Yeah.
But I was just thinking of like I wonder if they did it with reality TV. Like I feel like
The-
Love Is Blind might have been, but even that
the,
maybe was
the
batches.
circle, they tend to do like 4 episodes a week,
Okay.
and then the finale a week later.
Okay.
So they will do stuff like that, especially for stuff like reality. Yeah.
Okay, but even then, they're not being like, you are going to get one new episode of this every week. Even that, they're being like, we'll do it over 4 weeks, but you're going to get a bunch of episodes all at once. So that's the most they've been willing to go. This obviously happened with Stranger Things. This happened with Bridgerton. They separated the season. I think we have an idea maybe of why this is happening with Cobra Kai, but I could not believe the release strategy of Cobra Kai season 6 when I saw it, Taran, which was 5 episodes dropped last week, 5 more come in November of 2024, and 5 more come in TBD 2025. And that's season 6 of Cobra Kai, the final season of Cobra Kai.
Yeah, it's strange. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of like Attack on Titan in its final season, where like every time I thought Attack on Titan was ending, it was like, nope, this is actually part 1 of part 2 of part 3 of the I actually, to be honest, if you asked me, is Attack on Titan done? I'm not entirely sure.
Uh-huh.
I still have to watch the final season, and I'm not sure if it's done yet. But yeah, I mean, it's a thing that feels like Stranger Things gets broken up into two parts, and this is now getting broken up into three parts, and this feels like what you said, like sort of this hybrid method of extending these, later seasons. And we've seen this before. It's not like this is new. Breaking Bad itself, I think, right, was broken into two
Yeah.
final parts for the
Am
final
I gonna
season.
totally get fact checked? Did The Sopranos do this, Josh? I'm gonna like try to see if I can find it. Yeah, two parts for The
The-
Sopranos finale too. Look,
right.
HBO's doing it. Yeah.
So I mean, it's certainly something that has been done before, but this is, I guess, a slightly more extreme version of it. Cobra Kai, by the way, I thought starts very strong, and the release schedule of its final season feels perfectly representative to me of where the show went,
Uh-huh.
in terms of just like spinning its wheels, like continuing to spin its wheels over and over. So it makes sense to me that they're drawing this out as long as possible, because that feels like what the show has been for the last four seasons.
Yeah, so I think this Cobra Kai thing is, unfortunately, it's a very cynical take that I'm about to make. I was talking with Josh before the pod. This is probably has to do with some contract negotiation stuff. I think previously the splitting the seasons has been trying to keep quarterly numbers high. So if you are willing to pay for Netflix because you want to watch Bridgerton, you will end up subscribing in multiple quarters, just the way the quarters get split, and so they can count that as a subscriber in two quarters instead of just one if they dropped it all at once. With Cobra Kai, I think it's a little worse that if they call it all one season, that all those people are locked into the same contract. There's not necessarily renegotiating they have to do there, so that's kind of a bummer. And I think unfortunately Cobra Kai is like not the biggest hit on Netflix. It's not bad. It's the sixth season of a show, but it's not big enough that if the actors, say from Bridgerton, got put into the same situation, they would maybe have a little more leverage to be able to say, like, this is actually not great for us, in a way that I don't think the Cobra Kai cast does, and therefore, like, can't, it's just a practice that Netflix can use and kind of get away with in terms of, like, oh, isn't that weird that they're splitting up the season, instead of the very cynical take that it's like probably saving them money to do this, and is probably a little bit unethical, because there's no reason you couldn't just call each of these 5 episode seasons, but they're not. They're intentionally saying it's the final season broken up over three parts over what will almost be a year, depending on when that third part drops. So kind of not great for you know the show. But yeah, I mean, as I said, like, I mean, like, not uncommon in TV that sort of, like, if you see something it's like where the season, it seems weird that it's done like that, it's probably some sort of, like, their legal team has told them there's a reason to do this. So
Being
yeah.
predatory in the entertainment industry?
What?
What?
What? What? Yeah. So
Exploitative? What? Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we talked last week about Lady in the Lake, the
Yeah.
Natalie Portman show.
Yeah.
I did watch the first episode because I'm always excited to watch anything that Natalie Portman is in. I will say though that I was pretty bored by it.
Uh, yeah, I thought the show looks amazing. I'm intrigued by the story because it's based on a book, and I was sort of hooked at the beginning of the show. I really like the narration technique they're using about with the lady in the lake. No spoilers, but I do feel like it's a show that felt like I could be, like, definitely drifting towards my phone if I wasn't, like, actively trying to watch it to then talk about it. Big news: there's a lot of headlines about how they use de-aging technology, and people are pretty excited for maybe a Padme return in the Star Wars universe for Natalie Portman. Did you see that at all? Because they use de-aging technology in the show. So
Oh
I think
boy.
maybe that first happens in episode 2. But I literally saw a headline of, like, Lady in the Lake Lady
Well,
in the Lake
I think there's
excites
one scene.
fans. Yeah, it's in
I think
episode
there's
1.
Yeah, one scene in episode one where she's like in the car. But um, yeah.
Darren, if you got too much to watch, you can watch it. I watched both episodes. I probably will continue to watch it, and will let you know if it's worth catching up on. But I think your instinct to be like, it's fine, or like even like boring so far is fair, probably.
Yeah, this is not something I feel I can recommend at this time for most people at this point. And you know, hopefully it's just a slow start and it gets better and we can recommend it later. But like, man, it was definitely, you know, not really working for me. Speaking of, I
Yeah.
watched another episode of The Bear.
Yes. Yes. I believe Josh Rigger called this a bear with us as Taran watches The Bear. You're watching The Bear probably at the same pace. I think Josh Rigger might be outpacing you on his Survivor watch. But I believe if you watch one episode, it means you watched Forks.
I watched Forks. This episode was hyped up as like
I know. I
the
almost feel.
pinnacle.
I wish I didn't. I wish I didn't get hyped up for you because I'm so nervous right now, Taran.
And it was fine.
Oh man, you're wrong. You're wrong. It's not fine. It's great.
It was one of the better episodes of The Bear. It really was. But like for me, if it's like if I watched all of The Bear to get to this episode, it wasn't worth it.
Oh, wow, tough. I yeah, Josh Wigger. I think you could cut bait on The Bear. I think if you, I don't think you'll like season 3. Then I don't think you'll like it. So I don't think you have to watch. I think you could stop watching The Bear.
That was kind of my reaction. It was like Forks was like a 7 out of 10 for me. So it's
brutal.
like, you know, if this is the best it has to. Grant, I liked Honeydew better.
Wow.
I was more fun.
Oh, maybe you will like season 3. Actually, maybe you will like. I don't know. I do. I like The Bear a lot. I wasn't like a person who's like every time season 1 and 2 of The Bear came out, I was like, gotta watch The Bear. I watched them at the end of the year when I like saw that they were gonna make the list. So I can't say I'm there the whole time. Then when I do watch it, I'm like, oh man, I should have watched this so much sooner. But I think it's totally. I like that you don't think it's like, you know, peak TV, you know, prestige TV. I think that's fascinating. I think the thing for me, I always talked about Succession had this magic trick of making me care about awful people. I hated Richie so much to the point where I was actively annoyed he was on the show. Like I was not like, like the stuff that I don't like about The Bear, like is the like family tension drama, because I have that in my own life. And so I'm like, I can appreciate it for what it is, but I want less of it and not more of it. I think that's like some of the feedback why when people don't like fishes. The way I fell in love with Richie over the course of the Forks episode, I feel like for me felt like transformative television. But if it didn't work for you, I think that's totally a fair reaction.
I mean,
yeah.
Like I'll say this, because I feel like if I felt like this episode would make a meaningful impact on the character moving forward, I think I would like it a lot more. But I feel like I don't have faith in The Bear to change its character and formula moving forward because of this, if that makes sense.
That's the reason everyone hated season 3, is it changed the formula.
Oh, hey, listen, if they're willing to change things up, I'm in. Like, I just feel like
I need Josh to tell me if he thinks now, based on this conversation, whether Taran would or would not like season 3 of The Bear. I really can't.
I think I have to try it. I think okay. You know, at some point.
All right, well, take it slow. Don't feel like you need to rush. There's a lot to watch. I also I finished season 1 of Industry. I really liked it. I'm excited for the show to come out. I'm excited to dive into season 2. So we shall see. That premieres after House of the Dragon. I liked season 1 a lot. Still feel like there's like, you know, stars and scrubs. Like there's storylines I'm way more invested in than other storylines. Maybe even to a wider degree than I felt like after watching the first 4. I've heard season 2 is not different, but there's like a COVID aspect to it, which I'm actually kind of intrigued to check out. So I will continue my pace. I think I think that will put me on pace to be finished by the time Industry season 2 comes out. So Josh says the COVID element is overblown. There we go. Yeah.
Well, I think looking forward, I think this pinged on both of our radars that Time Bandits is coming up soon, which is I think fairly exciting in the sense that like it's something that is hopefully very good.
Yeah, I think we'll see. It's based on the 1981 film Terry Gilliam show.
Great movie.
It's created by Jermaine Clement, Ian Morris, and Taika Waititi.
Great creators.
So yeah, I'm excited. A lot of promise. It's another thing where Apple TV put money into a thing. I'm excited. I think it could be, Lisa Kudrow is in the show, I believe. I think she's Penelope. I'm Rachel House, who's been in a bunch of stuff recently. I'm excited to check it out. I think it will be 2-episode drops each, or two episodes will drop each week. So that's interesting. I think it's probably because it's a shorter comedy, I would imagine, is why they're doing it that way, but we'll see. So 2 episodes on July 24th. So, we'll see. It's on my radar. I'm going to watch both episodes. So yeah.
I'm a big Taika Waititi fan. I feel like he's made some really good stuff. I feel like the latest Thor was kind of like, uh-oh, has he lost it? And I also loved What We Do in the Shadows, especially the first few seasons. But then some of the later seasons, I'm starting to feel like, uh-oh, have they lost it? And so, even I don't know how involved Jermaine and Taika are with Our Flag Means Death, but I feel like it was like fine.
I don't think Jermaine Clement was involved in Our Flag Means Death. That was just Taika, I think.
Just Taika.
Yeah.
So it's like, I want this to be good. I want this to feel like top of his game, Taika, top of his game, Jermaine. But I'm a little skeptical, but my heart is open.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll watch it, and as we say, we shall see. Presumed innocent finale. And Taran, I think next week we're gonna do a little bit of a fun episode for folks. We're gonna mix things up a little bit. As maybe we get spoilery in a way we have not been so far on the Tastemakers.
Well, yes, all these shows are ending. The Acolyte, The Boys, Presumed Innocent, they're all ending at around this time. So I think it kind of makes sense to do one final check-in on all 3 of those shows and talk about the season in a spoilery way. So we will, what we'll do is we'll put the time codes in if you're watching the video, or if you're, listening to the podcast, we'll have it in the show notes, so that you know exactly what section is which if you haven't watched all 3. If you would just like to catch up on our spoilery chat of the season for that show, you can do so. We'll see how that goes, because I think especially with these 3 shows and the ways that we've been sort of like following them throughout their first season, it just makes sense to try to do a little spoilery experiment with them.
Yeah, I'm excited, and might mean in the future, if people want these sort of segments, we might be able to figure out how to make them work. I think the fact that these 3 shows line up within a week span of each other to be finished, and all shows that I think are very interesting in terms of what they were trying to do, what we saw on the television, whether or not it all worked or not. We'll chat about that next week. So I'm very excited. Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else? Are we wrapping up here?
I finished Interview with the Vampire. I'll tease that as like people can come back later to find my thoughts on Interview with the Vampire. And then Justice for the Curse not being nominated for an Emmy. That's my only thing. And Taran, I know you have a very busy summer. I will be taking on a challenge if anybody would like to join me, which is I typically do an Oscars gauntlet where I watch everything that gets nominated for an Oscar. So any Oscar, it could be, I have a theater near me. I'm very fortunate to be able to watch all like the shorts. So I watch not the article of clothing, the shorter style of movie. So I'm very fortunate that I can do that. I'm gonna do the Emmy gauntlet. So I'm gonna try and watch everything. The only thing I got confused by was there's a show called The Miss Pat Show that's in like its 4th season, and I have to figure out how I'm going to tackle that. I was very mad that I thought that was actually from the other 2. I don't know if you were an other 2 fan, but there was literally a show called The Pat Show on that, and I just thought maybe they just gave Molly Shannon an Emmy nomination for The Pat Show, but no, I'm gonna have to watch The Miss Pat Show. It's an entirely different show. And Mr. Monk's Last Case, a Monk movie, as Josh pointed out, is an Emmy nominated film, and it also does mean I tried my hardest not to watch Unfrosted, but I have to do that too. But I actually have a lot of it that I've already watched, fortunately, so I'm just missing some things here and there that I'll try. I think about 10 to 12 things I have to watch. So that's my goal. You don't have to commit, but if any listeners are going to join me on this adventure, I'd love to know.
All right, let Grace know if you can follow along. But in the meantime, that is what we have for you this week on the Tastemakers. Of course, subscribe if you have not already. and you will be notified when we do things. We're talking House of the Dragon. There's a couple episodes left. There's plenty of other coverage here at We Know Scripted TV. I'm doing plenty of stuff over with Big Brother and on Twitch, so tune in for all of that. Grace, anything else?
No, that's it for me.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us here today, and we will see all of you next time.